20 minutes away from here. We could do a 2-day, go out Friday night, Saturday night, and come back Sunday. Learn all these different skills. Lisa will show off her skills. We may even be able to get our Army Ranger Special Forces out there to show us some different things that they do, because I know he's going to be putting on a survival class where I've got the dates. We've got to figure out which ones we want to use. There's a lot of stuff going to be hidden. We're going to fly like you wouldn't believe this next year. But I'm going to need your help, and I promised this 2 months ago, but I didn't do it. I'm going to be putting out a list, and I've got it ready, of things that we need help with, volunteers and things like that. Thank you for coming out to the gun range. Those that did come out, I love it. We've still got some more work to do on Caleb's property, and we're going to be sending out through Facebook and emails too of what we got coming up. I encourage you to come out. It's just a great time to be with one another. Get to know, build relationships, and that way we know, because if something does happen, if something does come up, guys, we need a place to go. If you cannot stay in the city or anything like that, we need somewhere to go. We need to have community here. If you live close to somebody, if they need to go to your house, things like this. I mean, come on. These are just basic things. We're not talking the end of the world. I'm talking just the hurricane weather we had just a few years ago. We've all talked about that. So we've got to have people to rely on. Communication is number one. Number two is food you're going through. So we've done all this. Get on our website. If you haven't seen anything, we actually have a website that shows you how to start prepping and gives you guidelines to go through. So get on there. We're not finished with it yet. We will be having it done by December, but all kinds of different stuff. Now, I would like Matt to come up. Matt is the one that does these beautiful shirts for us. We just got him in. Come on, let's give him a round of applause. This is Matt Town. He is becoming a great friend. I find that we're more alike than we should be. So go ahead.
That's right. My wife said that we are no longer allowed to be friends because we're too close on this. We're getting in nonstop trouble.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time here. I'll be real quick. So we do have the polos here. We have the hats. We got the hats available in black and multicam. We love all things multicam, and we just do. But so the clothing that has MVP on it, there's definitely going to be a part of that helps to fund the group. But there's a lot of other stuff that I sell and I get into, including emergency food, emergency water, tactical kind of stuff like your packs, bug out bags. I have the radios over there that are solar and crank powered. But what I sell, I'm also going to return a percentage back to MVP. So it's very important for me. This group gets to do a lot of different stuff and gets to continue to grow. It's a fantastic idea. Appreciate everyone coming out supporting it. Let's continue to help support it and be able to do lots of good things here in the near future.
Thank you. Come on, guys, let's give a round of applause. We are going to have some good things for fundraising because we're hard at work. My guys just came from the gun show. They do an awesome job. They're part of a team. We love it. And if you want to come out and join us, just let us know. We can get you out there. You actually get in there. We make sure that you don't have to pay to get in the door, then you can go look around. Once you've done your time, your 2-hour time limits or whatever, it's a great time. I know I have to run Don off because he wants to be there all day. He talks, he's one of my best talkers out there. He'll just grab him out of the aisle and say, hey, come here, let me give you a flyer. He just loves it. And him and Gus both, and also too, Brian, I don't see him yet.
He's back here.
Okay, I was going to say he must have got lost somewhere. Brian is one of our best salesmen out there. This guy can nail it. But guys, we need help. If you want to come out and enjoy it, it's a great time to be around. We have a great day. We see all of our members. They come by. And you guys were out there. So, it's a great time. But I've got some good news. We're going to start doing some raffles. How many like to win a Henry 22 survival rifle? Huh? Okay. All right. So we're going to do, we may do some other thing. We're going to do some medic kits, things like this to help raise money. And we're going to need your help because we're actually going to have tickets that you can take to your work, to everywhere else, so that you can actually sell. They're going to be $10 tickets, maybe $5 tickets for a smaller thing. I know this because some of our police officers in the group said they have raised sometimes $5,000, $7,000 for a Glock. They sold 700 tickets. So guys, this could help finance us really big, especially for some of the things that we want to do. So this is going to be a good thing for all of us. So we've actually purchased, or we're going to purchase the rifle. We know which one we want, the camouflage one, things like this. So this is going to be our first start, plus the medic kits, and we may have some other things. Somebody donated a rifle bag that you can actually, we'll do that too. So there's a bunch of stuff that we can do. Somebody even talked about bringing excess, like if you're doing canning, we may doing jars of jellies, things like that. We may bring them in, sell them, or auction them off too. So guys, if you've got something that you think we can do that will benefit the group, let us know this. But now all of our vendors, how many remember Keely? She came up and spoke to us about essential oils last month. Yes. I don't know if you made the class. I could not, already had something scheduled, but we're wanting to bring them in to talk about their essential oils. This is something that I don't know a lot about, but some of the stuff that I do know is it'll surpass medication, a lot of different things that they're great for. So we'll bring them in to stop by. I know you've talked about or seen them at the tables, things like this. Pro-arginine, you all know that I use pro-arginine myself. They're trying to get me into that green stuff. I don't know about it yet, but I'm thinking about it. But pro-arginine, I love. And then we've got Nick back here. He's actually, if you're looking for books online, he can actually get you those for downloads, because if you can't carry, I've got probably stacks of books with all kinds of information. There's no way I could carry those with me. You can actually put them on an iPod, computer, things like that. So look at those too. Also too, we've got, well, I'm very limited. I think we've got one book left of the Preparedness manual.
I think I got 2.
Okay, so we got 3 left. If anybody, that's all we've got. We've sold 50 of them, guys, already. It's been awesome. They were grabbing them up down at the gun show this month. And also too, something we haven't had is our openers for your lids. They're sometimes hard to open up with a screwdriver, things like that. These will actually pop open. I've got 2 of those left. They went really fast. What?
Yeah, 4 or 5, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got 7 then. We got 7 left. I had a bunch of them. They sold a lot of them. So $10 a piece for those. And then we've got buckets, barrels. We've got them outside. May not have them all here. But if you need them, let us know before you leave. Yes, Q.
And I tell the women, those openers for those 5-gallon buckets are a lifesaver. I've had one for a long time.
Okay.
And they are terrific. You want one.
There you go. And we don't have any gamma lids. Now those are even the better, but I don't have any here because I didn't have time enough to run down. I'm just too busy. So we'll have those next month. But guys, we've got a lot of stuff here. These guys have put in their time and effort. Please look at their stuff, talk to them about it. But I'll be updating on the monthly newsletter, letting you know, especially for CCW classes. We're going to start them out at $75. You can't beat this. It's a 12-hour course. It's going to be a 12-hour course. You've got 10 hours of class time and then 2 hours of shooting, and we're actually doing it at our gun range. So just to keep you guys informed, this is what we got coming up. There's a lot of stuff, and if you have any ideas, send them to me, please. I've already had a bunch of them come to us and talk to us about it, but send them to us. We want your input. Anything you can help. If you've got ideas, we were talking about some of the fairs and stuff like that going out, because we want people to be involved. If you need pamphlets for when we email them out with a newsletter or whatever of the next class, print them out, put them on your bulletin board. You know, let them know that you're a crazy prepper. No, I'm just teasing. But you know, just get out there, get the word out. It'd be great. But yes, thank you, Mitch. Next month, I've got to have your money today for us to let. Now, if you don't have it today, you can let me know. We'll make special arrangements. But it's $20, and that's next month in November. What is the date?
The 16th.
The 16th, November 16th. This is going to be a very long class, okay? So bring your coffee, your juju, whatever you need, your pro-arginine to keep you steady and awake, because it's going to be, what we're going to do is do all the testing here, the actual showing of it, and then they're going to test on it, okay? And then you will be certified, yes?
Did you get a time yet?
Well, we're going to have to start it at 1.
At 1?
Yeah, we're going to have to start it at 1. So just to let you know, I originally said 2, I'll change it on the website. It's going to have to start at 1 because we're not going to probably until 8 o'clock. But there's a lot to put in this.
You bringing supper?
What's that? Am I bringing supper? No, we'll take a break. We'll break, yeah, I'll bring some more cake. But we will need to take a break in between there so you guys can get lunch just down the road. But this is going to be very worthy. This should be one of the most basic things that you know to save lives. This is just going to help you. My daughter she's pregnant, and talk about the Heimlich. If you don't know how to do the Heimlich, she was actually sitting at a certain angle, and she's pregnant, and it's put pressure on her. She almost choked to death. She couldn't even speak, and my wife jumped around her, got her breathing again, But that's how, I mean, that's how quick it can happen. If you don't know this stuff, guys, we need to do it. We're actually in the works right now with talking with a doctor who is into preparedness, who's going to come and show us some different things. And we may even get into suturing classes and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of cool stuff coming out. All right, well, I want to thank you for coming. If you haven't filled out those forms, please do. And we want to welcome you on the internet too today. And she is going to kill me, but I don't know your full name. Amanda, how do you say that again? Egloff, E-G-L-O-F-F, right?
Yes.
I know how to spell it, just pronouncing it. But Amanda has brought her time out today. She is I call her a professional beekeeper. She has a ton of hives around the Dayton area, so I'm sure she'll be explaining it. But she has brought a lot of stuff. She tells me she brings all of this stuff to everywhere she goes, every one of her. She's saying, yeah. But guys, let's give Amanda a round of applause.
If I talk at this level, or would you prefer that I use the microphone? Microphone? Okay, great.
There you go.
I can do this. I normally
You need it.
lecture in a classroom setting like community college, so you just have to sort of project and hope that the kids way in the back will actually hear you, although they're usually on Facebook. This is beginning beekeeping. I'm going to cover as much as I can today, but beekeeping is a very involved, very detail-oriented process, and really the best way is continuing education with beekeeping. I beekeep within a group. I've been beekeeping for 10 years. I started with my father-in-law, who is a third-generation beekeeper. He needed help one summer bringing in the harvest right after my husband and I got married. And I said, oh, me, please, take me. And I've been going ever since. It's something that they call bee fever. I totally believe in it. A lot of people think that you get suckered in by the queen's pheromones and you just sort of become her slave for life. And it's sort of that way. It's a labor of love. I am going to kind of go over basics with you. If you have any questions specific to preparedness, go ahead and feel free to ask me. I am not necessarily a prepper myself, but my husband is a law enforcement officer, and so some of these things I'm familiar with. They talk about it on some of the beekeeping forums that I follow, so I've been trying to give it a little bit of thought as I prepared my talk for today. So, and I'm totally used to answering lots of questions. I did second graders on Wednesday, which some of the craziest questions I've ever heard, like, why don't the boy bees just decide to help out? She's very indignant, like, why don't they just do some work? And well, they're not designed to do work. So I'm going to go along and maybe. Here we go. So a few little factoids about honeybees and food. Honeybees pollinate 30 to 40% of our food. So if you eat 10 bites of food, 3 of those bites are brought to you by honeybees. Honeybees, Apis mellifera is the European honeybee. It came over with the settlers. When they brought their crops, they also brought their honeybees to pollinate their crops. So honeybees are not indigenous to North America. You have lots of different native bees that are here in the Americas and that are throughout the world. But Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, was brought here by settlers, and it's found all around the world. Even as far north as Alaska. There are beekeepers up in Alaska. The almond crop in California, I don't know if you know this, but 80% of the bees in North America travel to California just to pollinate the almond crop. Part of this commercial practice is why beekeeping is in such danger right now. It is how we have seen the rapid spread of diseases, mites, all sorts of issues. Right now we have a shortage of honeybees in the United States, so Australia has been one way importing honeybees to pollinate the almond crop. It's one of the largest areas where you can grow almonds. You can grow them in the Mediterranean, and then you can grow them in Southern California because of the climate. Honeybee populations have steadily been declining worldwide. In 2013, it sort of hit its peak. A lot of the numbers on last year have been a little bit better. The 2014 winter, it's been more encouraging than the numbers I saw on the 2013 winter. Spain lost as many as 80% of their honeybees. In Europe, they have taken much greater steps to outlaw neonicotinoids, agricultural chemicals, and really button down on trying to figure out what's going on, whereas here in the States, we lost about 40%, but we really, nationwide, we have not done enough to protect the honeybees. Some states like Oregon are making laws to outlaw certain chemicals, which is fantastic, but you kind of hope that the rest of the country gets on board too. Okay, then in 2013, 41% of all colonies were lost over the winter. So honeybees repopulate themselves on a society level. They swarm and they split and they build those numbers back up. However, once we start getting into the over 50% loss category, it's going to be harder and harder to meet the demand of beekeepers and to pollinate our foods. So that's one of the reasons why I beekeep, is because I am very concerned about the sustainability of bees. Mostly for me, I keep bees just to keep bees. I've stopped caring about the pollen product or the honey product or the wax product. I'm really focused on trying to keep my bees alive. And the other thing is that nobody knows why. Everybody wants to know, why are the bees dying? Well, we don't know why. It's a combination of things that creates a toxic environment for the honeybees. They're sort of like our canary in the coal mine. They're one of the early creatures that start to die. So when the creatures who eat your food are dying in mass numbers, you know that there's something wrong with your food. So, but because it's a big corporation and they're big business, they really can't agree on what the reason is, and they may never agree on what the reason is. We may have MIT's little motorized robots. I don't know. The other thing here, the general loss of pollinators seen in other species. Worldwide, you are seeing a decrease in all pollinators. So that means birds, bats, bumblebees, carpenter bees, butterflies. The monarch butterfly lost 60% of its population in 2013. So it's not just us, it's not just the beekeepers. However, because we have a product that people eat and think is delicious, we've been making a lot more noise. The honey industry is a big industry. They've done a lot of lobbying trying to get protection for bees. Okay, so the beekeeping season, it revolves around the life cycle of the honeybee. Everything we do is in preparation for the next step in their life cycle. And so when we work in tandem with that, we see better results. You can't make bees do stuff. There's this common misconception with early beekeepers that if you do X, Y, and Z, your bees will do this. No, they're not. So understanding what that life cycle is really what is going to help you be successful as a beekeeper. And it is normal to struggle in the first couple of years. I've been doing this for 10 years. Last winter, we lost all of our hives but one. Don Popp, who's a beekeeper in Oxford, Ohio, he's a commercial keeper. He keeps 500 hives. Last year, he replaced 60% of his hives because they didn't overwinter. So you're talking about losses in the hundreds. It seems kind of macabre when you go to the beekeeping schools because we're all talking about loss. But the high of the spring and seeing your bees grow and seeing that new life totally makes up for it. You're going to have years when you lose all your bees. You're going to have great harvest years. You're going to see unexpected things. But it's an incredibly satisfying hobby.
It has to be a passion.
It does, and it becomes a little, it becomes consuming. Yeah, I was telling about my mother-in-law. She's the only one of us in the family who does not keep bees. And at the dinner table all spring long, every Monday, bees, 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 bees. Did you read this article? Did you see this post? What do you think we're going to do? Hey, over at the Applegates, I saw this weird thing. And she just sits there eating her dinner. So, a couple of things to remember. Bees don't read the same books as you do. There are lots of books, websites, information out there about what your bees should be doing. The bees don't read the books. They will always do something you don't expect. You will find the queen in a weird spot. You will have them building up instead of down. You never really know what they're going to do. We caught a feral hive this year, and instead of them nicely building their wax in rows, they went crosswise and diagonal and all over the place like they would naturally, like in your chimney, which we totally and completely did not expect at all. And they know better than you. Bees know what to do from the moment that they hatch. Bees start working as soon as they emerge from their hatching until they die out in the field. So when in doubt, if they're doing something, if they're requeening themselves, if they won't work a particular section of your comb, trust the bees. Take that comb out. Let them requeen themselves. They obviously know that there's something going on and you should listen. There's a lot of books entitled things like Wisdom of the Hive, trying to understand that we don't know better than nature in this instance. So talk a little bit about timeline. Right now is the beginning of preparation time. Between now and February, really late February, you want to be ready. You want to have your equipment picked out. You want to have a hive management plan. You want to be making all of those decisions, because just like raising your kids, beekeeping has tons of options. There are people who are die-hard, you have to do it this way. There are people who are die-hard, you have to do it exactly the opposite way. And if you ask a beekeeper how to do it, they're going to tell you two ways: the way they did it and the way they would do it the next time. And if you ask a group of 10 beekeepers, you're probably going to get 20 or 30 opinions. I mean, it's incredibly varied. There are a lot of Facebook pages like Beekeeping, Backyard Beekeepers, Greater Dayton Beekeepers that I follow, just so that I can see what all these different people are doing. Spring is when the beekeeping season really kicks off, March through late May. When you order bees or you get bees, you're going to get them sometime in the very early April to late May period. So that's when the flowers start to come out. Now, if you are really into this and you want to start planting for your bees, the bee season actually begins the previous spring. Some people will plant meadows, or they will plant food source for their bees the year before. We don't do that, but some people do. But as soon as it reaches 50 degrees is when I really start paying attention to what my bees are doing out in their hive. Usually it's about 20 days after it hits 50 degrees is when the swarming season will begin. And that's when I'm really active in collecting swarms. I'm on a list, so people call me and I have bees, and I go get them. And I'm also making sure that my bees don't swarm. I want to split them before they do that.
Does it matter that you're getting them from a different source, the bees and stuff? I mean, does that hinder anything?
No, I love swarms because it means that they live through the winter. Okay. They live through the winter mostly neglected because they have swarms, so they're usually not somebody's bees. They're either feral bees living in a building or in a tree somewhere that have swarmed off to start a new home. And so we call that survivor stock. And I'm very interested in survivor stock, especially after last year's winter. I didn't think we'd get any swarms, and we got 8. So. The next sort of part of the season is late summer in July, is typically when you want to be harvesting. We have had some late summers and some late springs and wet summers. So this date sort of varies when your harvest is. But typically, you are going to take off honey in the late summer because there's going to be another flow of nectar after that in the August, September time period when the goldenrod is blooming, that's going to help them bring up their winter reserve. So anything extra you're going to take off in July before drought season. If you wait till after drought season, they're going to eat it all. And then late summer, August, is when you need to start preparing for winter hibernation. You're going to need to be doing medications, if you're doing medications, treating for mites, making sure that the amount of honey they have in the hive is going to get them through the winter, making sure that their population is high enough to get them through the winter. August seems like a really early time to start thinking about winter, but by October, right now, is when I can't do anything else. I was out yesterday just kind of looking at my hives just to see who's going to make it and who's not going to. And you have to look at it very matter of fact, like, okay, this hive didn't catch up, they're going to be dead, they're going to be dead, they're going to be fine. And that way you're sort of just keeping tabs on them after that point. But by now, there's really not much I can do except put sugar on my hives and hope that that emergency food will get them through if they don't have a break in the weather. We've had a lot of rain recently, which has really cut into their fall pollen and nectar collection.
So bees don't fly in the rain or anything like that?
No, bees will not leave their hive if it is raining, if it is under 50 degrees. Obviously, they don't go out in the winter, but when we have a warm day, like a spring thaw, like in February when it's over 50, they'll come out and do a cleaning flight. You'll see all of this debris in front of your hive, and it means that the bees have left, kind of flown around and gone back in. They don't actually sleep, so they're not hibernating, but they are awake, they're still laying, they're still active because they need those bodies to keep the hive warm. Bees keep the hive at 92 degrees. So that means in the summer they're cooling the hive to 92 degrees, and it means in the winter they're heating it by movement of their bodies. So there are unlimited ways to keep bees. There are tons of ways. I could give 6 different lectures on different techniques of beekeeping. Some people are very pro modern agriculture, treatments, medications, being preemptive and doing things with their bees. There are people who are very natural and organic. I could talk all day. However, the best way to get started is to ask yourself these questions. Why am I keeping bees? Do I want a product? Do I want a crop I can sell? Am I selling pollination services? Am I collecting pollen? Do I want to sell wax out of my hive? Why am I doing this? For me, I'm doing it because I want to keep bees. I enjoy them. If I don't get a honey crop, I'm not too worried about it anymore because it's happened so many times that it hasn't happened. So for me, it's the problem solving. You know, I want to know, how am I going to keep these bugs alive? It's a constant like gnawing at you. What do I want from my bees? So do I want just the satisfaction of raising them? Do I want a product? Do I just want the experience? How much time and commitment do I want to give this endeavor? Am I going to be able to go out every week? Am I going to go out every month? Do I want to spend a lot of time? Do I also grow a vegetable crop? A lot of the urban farmers that I work with, they don't have time to do bees. It is too time intensive for them. You know, if they could keep bees in a box and look in on them every 3 months, they would do it. So you have to sort of look at it, the different management techniques and decide, do I have that amount of time? Do I not have that amount of time? I go out every weekend to my bees in the summer. My kids are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go. And I'm like, get in the car, put your bee suit on, take a football, it'll be great. How much money am I willing to invest? You can spend thousands of dollars keeping bees, or you can spend a couple $100s keeping bees. It all just depends on what your skill set is, what equipment you can make yourself, what techniques you use, and whether or not you want the equipment with all the bells and whistles. I tend to make most of my equipment, the equipment that I can make myself, I try to make myself. I come from a technical theater background, so I have a small wood shop in my garage, and it's pretty simple. They're boxes. I think I can build some boxes. Some of them are fancy and they have dovetail joints. Top bars are pretty simple. You can go all in, or you can do very sustainable, and I talk a little bit about that more when I talk about equipment. I have some links to some websites that have DIY information in them. And then once you know realistically what type of beekeeper you're going to be, then you can start planning your hive management plan. And I try to do my hive management plan in the winter before. I know what I'm going to treat for and what I'm not going to treat for. If I have a sick hive and they have X, Y, or Z disease, I'm going to destroy them and I'm going to move on. If I have a hive that has a treatable, easily managed condition, then maybe I'll spend some extra time with them. But I have to be careful in managing my time and how many hives that I take, because it's really easy to get overwhelmed because these bugs, they double and they multiply, and you're like, we're going to have 8, and then you have 12, and maybe you don't have equipment for 12. It's very hard to, I get very excited about swarms, and my father-in-law and my sister-in-law are like, look, we only have one base left, so you're gonna have to get creative in combining. And I'm like, but I can't help myself when that housewife calls you. Oh my gosh, there's bees, and I've been in my house and I can't leave because they're gonna kill me. And you're like, they're not gonna kill you, okay? They're not looking for human victims. Just be able to get that continuing education out there, because it is so difficult right now to keep your bees alive if you're not on top of the latest research. There's the Greene County Beekeeping Association in Xenia, Ohio. They're a more traditional bee club with elected officers. They offer a lot of different programming and special topics classes. The Miami Valley Beekeepers Association, they're up at the Bruckner Nature Center. They also teach a beginning beekeeping class. Southwestern Ohio Beekeepers Association, they are sort of Southern Ohio. I'm a member there also. They have a bee school in every March. They announce registration opening every January. It is an all-day conference. They offer it has breakfast and then 4 breakout sessions, and for each session you have 4 different options. So it's an all-day class. It covers everything from very basic intro to specific classes on pest management, disease management, nutrition, planting a meadow, candle making, whatever. They also provide a catered breakfast and lunch. I think it's like $60. It's a great value. I go every year. They also have vendors who sell stuff. So if you don't want to have to pay for shipping and you want to order your own equipment, a lot of the vendors, if you tell them you're going to be at that school, they'll bring your order to you. West Central Ohio Beekeepers Association, they're up in Urbana. Every year they offer a queen rearing class. It's $300. It includes all of the equipment, and they bring in Dr. Larry Connors, who wrote the book Bee Sex and Bee Sex Essentials. And he teaches a 3-day course in which you actively raise queens and graft them and breed them. So it's a really great class. It's a little expensive, but it's a really good resource. And then the Ohio State Beekeepers Association is the parent organization based out of the Ohio State University's Bee Lab. They have an entomology program, and one of their big parts of that program is their bee lab. They do a lot of research. There are a lot of really big, important beekeepers in Ohio. And their website has a lot of great resources. They have a web series of beekeeping classes. They have lists of associations. They have links to the bee lab pages where they have information about native plants, native pollinators. Every month they have a free webinar where somebody who works in the field of beekeeping comes and gives a talk. Last month was winterizing your hives. The month before that was nutrition. Always something interesting, lots of free education. It's pretty awesome. So today I'm going to talk about these very practical issues to get you started. You're going to read a whole bunch of books, and you're going to have a whole bunch of different opinions on how you want to keep bees, but all of these things are sort of the same problems. Where will I keep my bees? Where do I get my equipment? Where do I get my bees? And what do I do with them once I get them? Nothing like getting a box of bees in the mail to say, great, okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about location and zoning. It's going to be different for all of you, but I really am an advocate of checking out your zoning laws. You always want to be on the friendly side of the law. I encourage that. In the state of Ohio, you are supposed to register your bees. It's $5 per apiary location. You can opt in or out of inspection. You can contact your inspector to make an appointment for them to be inspected, but they do offer testing services. So for example, my bees got sick this year. It was a brood disease. A lot of brood disease looks similar. Some of them are death sentences and some of them are treatable. Inspector came, she took samples, she sent them to the lab. They got the disease diagnosis, they sent it back to me. I was able to treat my bees. I did not have to pay for that. My $5 paid for that. Wow. So it's a great service that they offer. You will read horror stories online about people getting particular diseases and the inspector coming in and seizing their bees and burning them. We are a non-burning state in Ohio. So that means if you get American foul brood, which is the disease where in most states they will destroy your hives because it is so contagious, it will decimate other populations around you. Ohio gives you the option to treat. So in Ohio, they will not seize your bees if they are sick. If you don't treat them, they may get kind of mean with you, but we are not a burn state, so we're not going to seize and destroy bees. But you see a lot of interesting reporting online about that. I like our inspector. She's a nice lady. Anyway, so different zoning laws everywhere. I saw a question online from a guy who was a prepper, and he said, well, I want to include bees in my bug out plan. What's the best way to transport them? And the general group consensus was don't. Don't strap bees to your moped. Have your bees at your destination. Keep them there. It was not something I had ever thought about, but to me, I was just like, no, that seems horrible. Yeah, but it did get me in the right mindset for today. So I would suggest keeping your bees at your destination place. Typically, when you place your bees, you are looking for some sort of like tree line that has a north-facing exposure, so that in the winter, when the sun comes up in the east, they get that early morning light. In the winter, it is critical for them to get as much daylight as possible because that heats the hive and it's less work that your bees have to do, so that's less food they have to eat to make that energy.
So set them next to your solar panels.
Next to your solar panels, next to your house. Some people build these elaborate enclosures for their bees, hay bale, windbreaks, all kinds of stuff. But you'll kind of get used to it. You'll be kind of walking around and you're like, okay, this is north. Okay, another thing you want to look for, out of major walkways in your yard or garden, a lot of people think that you need to point the bees where you want them to collect the food. You don't need to do that. They have a 3-mile radius, so 3 miles around their hive, it's where they're going to go to forage for food. They can tell each other where the food is. If you want them to pollinate your garden, don't put them in your garden. You can't walk in front of their entrance. It's like O'Hare. They're coming and going and coming and going, and if you walk in there, those guard bees are going to say, hey, buddy, get out of here. And they're hard to move. Once you move them, they'll keep going back to that location. So please don't put them right in the middle of your garden. You also want to be in a well-ventilated, dry area. So high ground with a good prevailing wind, not a lot of mold and mildew, shade, swamp water, not good for bee health. You would not do well living in a swamp. The bees won't do well living in a swamp. They need dry, sunshine, happy area. Accessibility by car or cart. If you have them on your own property, you don't necessarily need to be able to drive to them, but this little box here, when this is full of honey, weighs 65 pounds. I don't want to carry that for an acre. I just don't. So anywhere you keep them, make sure that you can get to them either with some sort of garden cart or your vehicle. I try to park as close as I can because all of our hives are away from our property. Near fresh, clean water. A hive needs 128 gallons of water per year to, well, one, drink, two, to cool their hive in the summer. And they have this fancy evaporation air conditioning system where they carry in droplets of water and they use their wings to evaporate it into the air, and that cools the temperature in the hive, because if they don't cool the temperature in the hive, everything melts. It's also important that water be like circulating water that isn't stagnant, because they can pick up diseases from stagnant water. Away from agricultural spraying, I talked to a few of you before I started. My city bees are way more healthy than my country bees. I have bees out in Yellow Springs. I have bees near the Tecumseh Land Trust. Well, I had them. They're all deceased. You're supposed to get notified if you have an agricultural neighbor who sprays. I have never, ever, ever been notified, and I've been next to an orchard for 2 years. There's also some new special crops registry where they're really supposed to notify you if they spray. I still didn't get notified, and I'm next to an orchard. So if you can be as far away as possible from commercial agriculture, it's going to be easier. Talk to your neighbors. I have heard plenty of sob stories from people who have gotten bees even though they know that their neighbor has a kid who is allergic to bees. Your neighbor will not be rational when they have a kid who is allergic to bees. This particular neighbor took a bottle of 7 Dust and killed his hive. He took him to court. You have to live next to these people. If they don't want bees there, there are lots of other properties, farmers, urban farmers, who will take your bees, and you can keep them somewhere else. It's easier on your own property, but it's way easier to keep your neighbors happy. You can't necessarily be sued. Maybe you could be sued for negligence if you know that I don't know. I've never actually seen a case where the beekeeper actually gets sued for somebody being stung. But talk to your neighbors, follow the zoning law, be a good neighbor. It'll be easier for you.
Now, I have heard of people being sued because of agriculture, because of
Yeah.
Monsanto's and their spray design.
Yeah, and there's a group of beekeepers in Canada who are suing. But you know, when it comes to your neighbors, I mean, you've got to talk to them.
Yeah.
Bribe them with honey. That helps. Helps a whole lot. We keep all of our bees off of our own property except for one hive at my in-laws, and we give honey to all of those people. So it smooths things over.
How far over does that neighbor's, for example, my nearest neighbor's 500 feet away, I really need to talk to them about that, or?
It depends on your relationship with them, but I find that parents of children are the most irrational people in the world.
Okay.
I teach second graders every year, and inevitably I get that one parent who bugs out later because their kid is allergic and they were in a classroom without bees with beekeepers. You know, it's always just good to be like, hey, I want you to know, because if your hive swarms, you don't know, they might go in their yard. And if they have a water source in their yard, if they have a pool, bees love pools. Or if they have a hot tub, even a bird bath, you can't predict where your bees are going to go collect water. 10 to 1, it's going to be the neighbor that doesn't like bees. Dr. Tu tells a funny story about his next door neighbor. She had this bird bath, and his bees loved the bird bath. He had 4 different bird baths up in his yard that the bees would not visit. She got to the point where she was so fed up, she gave the bird feeder to Dr. Tu. They went to the new feeder that she put in her yard. So it wasn't necessarily the feeder, it was where it was, for some reason, was the best source of water. I don't know, maybe her water was softened. Anyway, but talk to your neighbors, have a good relationship with them, invite them to come see your bees. People love to come see bees, you know, give them honey, but make sure that you know that they're not, that they don't have an allergy, that they don't have a loved one with an allergy, because if they find out that you do, there's no telling what they will do. People are terrified of bees. I see it every time I go to a swarm call. I'm excited. That's a great looking swarm. And they're like, this is my worst nightmare right here. And you're not even wearing a veil. So And then the other thing I recommend is putting together a first aid kit for stings. If you have never been stung by a bee and you want to keep bees, talk to your doctor. They're either going to recommend allergy testing, or they're going to say, I'll give you a prescription for an EpiPen. There are some beekeepers who think that every beekeeper should carry an EpiPen in case somebody around them gets stung and has a reaction. I do not carry an EpiPen. I don't have an allergy. Nobody in my family has an allergy. I do carry a bottle of children's Benadryl because I think that if I start to have a life-threatening reaction, drinking that bottle of Benadryl is going to do more for me than the EpiPen will. But that's my own informed decision. If you have never been stung, I urge you to talk to your doctor and make an appropriate plan for that. But definitely carry Benadryl in your car, either the cream or the liquid, so that you have some kind of backup plan. They have sting extractors and there's all kinds of stuff you can do, but just make sure you're thinking about that safety so that when you're out in the middle of the field and maybe you've been stung 100 times before, but this one is different, that you have some way to take care of yourself. There are lots of different types of hives out there. There are these really cool looking sun hives and different European style hives that I'm not really going to talk about because for the ease of things, I'm going to talk about what's most commonly used. Yeah, do you have a question?
Do you have African bees around here?
No, it is not warm enough for African bees to overwinter here. You can, however, and I had this happen last year, I took a hive from a beginner beekeeper who did not want it anymore because his bees were mean. And I did a little bit of research online, and the company he bought his bees from was in Texas. Texas has Africanized bees, and this particular company has a policy that if you have aggressive bees, they will requeen your hive for free because they cannot guarantee that there are no Africanized traits in their bees. So he bought these aggressive, hygienic bees. That's the phrase they use for mite resistant. It really just means more aggressive. And they were mean. They were so mean. I don't like requeening a hive. I feel bad when I squish that queen. I enjoyed squishing this queen. You could be 40 feet away from that hive and the guards would be active and you would get stung up. I mean, you would just get stung again and again. I was on the other side of the garage at the end of the driveway, out of the visual line of sight of this hive, and I got attacked. I had 6 of them in my hair. I took my veil off because I thought, oh, I'm in the clear, took my veil off. They're in my hair, I got stung on my chin. So I got my veil back on and I smooshed them all. And my husband's like squishing them in my hair. And we said, yeah, we need to requeen this hive right away. But Africanized bees, really Africanized bees, they don't survive the cold winters up here. It's not warm enough. But Texas definitely has them. So if you buy from the Better Bee Company, be prepared for possibly aggressive bees.
The queen dictates the policy of everything.
She does. She has a huge amount of influence. They all talk via pheromones, and if you have a really aggressive queen, all the bees are aggressive. We requeened her with a carniolan. 2 weeks later, it's the nicest hive you'd ever been in. Wow. It was bizarre. I thought for sure we'd have to wait for a full brood cycle to get better behaved bees. No, this particular hive had a higher level of alarm pheromone than a normal hive would. So it's amazing the difference a queen will make. But equipment types, this is a Langstroth hive. It's the most typical. I'm going to kind of roll this up here in a minute. I kind of do an overview and then I'm going to talk about this in particular. This is the most commonly used hive in the United States. It was invented by a man who eventually settled here. You can get equipment through all kinds of sites online. You can build your own equipment. It's very versatile. You can easily build it at home. There's also the top bar hive, which is really popular with urban and suburban beekeepers. It's derived from African beekeeping techniques. It's often called the Kenyan top bar hive. And then you have the Ware hive, which is a combination of Langstroth and top bar practices. It's very popular in Europe, especially England. So this is a Langstroth hive. This is our apiary in Yellow Springs before they were deceased. You can see here they have boxes that are stacking. We call this supering. You add boxes as they're needed. As you can see, these boxes over here are very short. It's because this hive is only 2 boxes tall. These bees are 1, 2, 3 brood boxes tall, and then they have additional honey boxes up on top. It's a great way to be able to harvest, to take frames out, to swap frames in between hives. It's a lot of lifting. It's a lot of lifting. Lorenzo Lorraine Langstroth, or LL Langstroth, invented this hive. It was patented in 1853, I do believe. He's originally from Massachusetts. He settled in Oxford, Ohio, and he's actually buried here in the Woodland Cemetery. He dropped dead preaching on Wayne Avenue at the Presbyterian Church. He is considered to be the father of American beekeeping. Before the invention of this hive, the primary way of keeping bees was in a skep, a straw skep, in which case when you went to harvest, you crushed the entire skep, killing your bees, destroying the wax. It was not sustainable, and so beekeeping was not done on a large agricultural scale like it is now. He discovered the idea of bee space. If you argue with the European, they'll tell you that the French figured it out first and he copied it, but he got the patent first, so good on him. He discovered that in a space 3/8 of an inch, bees will not fill that space with wax. If it's less than 3/8 of an inch, they'll fill it up with propolis, which is a sticky material that they make and they line their hives with. It's an antibacterial agent, antibiotic. It's made out of tree sap and honey and nectar and pollen and stuff they find. Every hive has different propolis, but if they have a gap smaller than 3/8 of an inch, they will fill it with this goop. That's what's all over my stuff here. This is not wax or nectar, it's propolis. It doesn't wash out. You have to break it down with like Everclear. It just doesn't, it's tough.
Now, is there any use for that?
Yes, some people collect propolis and they make tinctures out of it. Some people, they break it down with Everclear into a tincture. Some people freeze dry it into little pellets and they take it. But every hive has a different magic formula, so it's not commercially sold because they can't label what's in it. So this idea of the bee space, the 3/8 of an inch, is what is the basis of all the measurements inside the Langstroth hive. So there's 3/8 of an inch between frames, there's 3/8 of an inch between levels, because the bees will not fill that so that they can move around in it. Like I said before, the frames are added as needed. This is called supering. It all comes apart, and I will take this apart here in a second and show you all the pieces. And the big plus to the Langstroth hive is that you reuse the wax year after year. So when you take your comb out, you cut the cappings, you spin it in a centrifuge extractor, you can then put that comb back into the hive. The bees do not need to spend nectar to build new wax. They simply repair the wax that is there. You get a higher honey yield using the Langstroth hive. And I'm going to kind of take this apart here, so I'm going to do my best to be on the microphone, but it might not work. I'll try. If I need an assistant. Usually my husband comes with me, but he had to work today. He couldn't get a trade. I just turn this off and talk really loudly in my professor voice. All right, so this is a Langstroth hive. This is what we use with our bees. This is the bottom board. This is a screened bottom board. You can see that there are handles cut in, and even though there are no bees in here, it's still sticky. So I'm going to use my hive tool here to take this apart. Okay, good. Lots of lifting. Oh God, yeah, I was out by myself yesterday. I built this one myself out of a terrarium lid and some scrap wood that I had laying around. This has a screened bottom, which is really important for pest management. It means that all the debris and parasites that are in your hive, they fall through this 1/8 inch mesh and they fall out of the hive and they don't come back in. There are solid bottom boards that are a solid piece, but you get a lot of debris that builds up here and you got to clean them out occasionally. Has a slot in the back, so if I need to close this up, if I want to check my level of mites and I want to see how many mites fall off my bees, this slot here allows me to put in a 1/4 inch thick material, whether that's Luan or whether it's corrugated plastic. It slots in right here in the back so that you can close it up to be like a solid board. The ones you buy commercially, the screen also slots in and is removable, so if they propolize and wax this all up, you can replace it. But I was short, so I put this together from some pieces we had here. You can see right here, this is that 3/8 inch space. So between the bottom of the first box and this opening, I've only got 3/8 of an inch. It seems very tiny, but that's all they need. Up here on the top, this is called a telescoping outer cover. It's got metal flashing here just to keep it a little more weatherproof. Commercial beekeepers just use a plywood top and then they replace it because they've got 600 hives and they don't want to put metal on the top of 600 hives. Inside of this, you can see this is all propolis. This is where stuff has been like stuck to the lid. Like I'll put branches on top to elevate the lid a little bit in the summer to give them more ventilation. They propolize the branches onto the lid. Everything is propolis. This, however, is a brand new inner cover built yesterday. It's a 1/4 inch material here. It's got holes for ventilation because the way that the bees ventilate the hive, they draw air in through the front, up through the hive to the top, and then out the back. So it's sort of this motion. That's what this notched opening is for. It goes towards the back so that the air comes out and out the back so that in the winter you have a nice breeze coming through, drawing moisture out of the hive. It's very important that you have a cross breeze to keep it dry in the winter. It sounds like they're going to freeze to death, but the moisture is more detrimental than the actual air. Now your first box that you're going to put on, this is a deep. Langstroth boxes come in 3 sizes. This is a deep, this is a medium, and then there's a smaller size called a shallow that is essentially 2 shallows equal a deep, 3 mediums equal 2 shallows. Or no, 3 mediums equal 2 deeps. A lot of people run an all medium system. When this is full, this is only 65 pounds. And as I say only, when this deep is full, it's anywhere from 85 to 100 pounds. So if your bees get a wild hair and they put honey in there instead of brood, you've got to take that 100-pound box back to your honey house and extract it. That's how I got started in this, because my father-in-law said, I am done doing this by myself. So let's set this one right here. Typically, the way the bees build is I find, the bees build up. So you start with one box. Either you're going to get a package or a nuke or something like that. You're going to leave them in this box until it is 80% full. Now the frames inside of the box here, this one is partially drawn out. This is a deep frame. I label the date that I made this frame. It's very important with all the agricultural chemicals that are out there that you replace these frames every 5 years. So 5 years, let's see, 2013, so in 2018, this is going to go, the wax is going to go in the wax melter, the frame's going to go in the fire, and I'm going to cycle this out so that I have clean wax in my hive. This deep frame, when you buy them, comes in a million little pieces. These 4 pieces are separate, and then the foundation, if you choose to put in foundation, is also separate. I have some foundation in here, maybe. Okay, this is what foundation looks like. It's a very thin, pressed sheet of wax. It's translucent, you can see through it. It has the honeycomb pattern sort of embossed on it. There are people who think that, we need to tell bees how to build their wax. However, with one this size, the comb rarely survives being in the extractor if it doesn't have a wire foundation in it to reinforce it. We did some foundationless, meaning we let the bees build all the wax in here themselves. In a frame this size, it breaks very easily. So we generally tend to use foundation in our deeps just so that it's not constantly breaking. Like we would have them break in the hive during the winter, it'd get cold, and it would crack and it would fall over and it would mess everything up. You can see here, this is a much older wax frame. This one is fairly new. They didn't use it, they drew it out, but they didn't fill it with anything. You can see that there's discoloration here. This is normal discoloration. Brood, when they hatch, they leave sort of like a thin membrane behind, and that's what makes this wax darker. A lot of new beekeepers, they see this dark coloring of the wax after a hatch out, and they think there's some sort of disease present. It's just going to get darker and darker until it gets this color. This one is at the end of its life cycle. This one will get replaced next year. You can see this is generation after generation of bees that have hatched out of this. So it goes from this very light, it starts white, and then ends up this very dark color. There are 10 frames to a box. It will fit 10. Generally, we tend to do 9 in our boxes because it makes it a little easier to take them in and out. As the bees cover everything with propolis on the ends, it gets harder to pull the frames in and out without damaging the bees. Generally, you'll have one of these, and then if you are keeping in deeps and mediums, you will put on another deep, and that will be their brood chamber. It will be 2 deeps tall, and then you will put on a medium honey super. If you're doing all mediums, it's 3 mediums for a brood chamber. And they sit up on top just like this. You line them up. If you look underneath, you can see that the frames come all the way down here, and then that these frames sit underneath this lip about 3/8 of an inch, so that there's very little space between here and here. The bees will build all kinds of wax and stuff between these two. And if, say for example, I put a medium frame in this deep box, my bees will build wax on the bottom of that frame all the way down. Bees hate empty space. They will fill it however they can. I have a couple examples of natural comb in here. We had a cutout that we did, so we went somewhere and they had bees and we cut the wax out and we took the bees somewhere else. And we rubber banded the comb into the frame here, and you can see that they have since affixed the wax back onto the frame. But the rubber bands are pretty useful. Eventually, you can see that there was a rubber band here. The bees will chew that off and they'll take it out of the hive for you. But you can see that this wax has many different sizes of cell in it. The bees have been building essentially what they need. The smaller cells are for worker bees, the larger cells are for drones or for honey collection, and they'll usually do both kinds. Yeah?
Where's the queen?
The queen is going to be down in the brood box. She spends all of her time laying. So as bees hatch out, she sort of has a cyclical cycle. So she'll start in the middle and then work her way up and out, sort of in an orb. And then as the bees in the center hatch out, she returns to that place and begins to lay in that all over again, of a laying pattern and how she lays in the box. So this is the Langstroth hive system. Generally, when you first start out, we recommend getting 2 hives because you can set them next to each other, and because their parts are interchangeable. If you have a weak hive, if they have weak brood, if you lose a queen, any of those things, you can take equipment out of one hive and put it into your other hive to help build it up. So it's great that they're interchangeable like that. There have been many times when we had a queen fail and maybe we didn't catch it before the eggs got too old and they can't raise a new queen on their own. will take a frame of open brood with eggs from another hive, to brush their bees off, put it in their hive, and then they'll take those eggs and they'll build queens. So it's really nice to have 2 or 3, or to have a buddy who has hives, who's not afraid to share, because that's what it's meant to do, is to be interchangeable. There are also different kinds of accessories you can get for this hive. There are queen excluders, which are screens you put on top of your brood chamber to ensure that your queen stays down. But the bees don't always. Sometimes they don't like them and they won't go up into the honey supers, and so they'll swarm because you've restricted their space. There are double screen boards, top boards that are just screened. Solid bottoms. There's a lot when you look in a catalog, and there are probably 6 or 7 different style of frames that you can buy, with or without foundation, with or without certain features. One of these days I'm going to figure out how to efficiently build my own so I don't have to spend all winter assembling frames. My sister-in-law assembles most of the frames because she has the most downtime during the day, and she wanted me to take a box of 50 to the 2nd graders to see if they would assemble them for her. But that's essentially your evening activity in the winter, is sitting there. You can build a homemade jig to kind of hold it in place, and you're nailing the top and nailing the bottom and putting it in, and it's lots of teeny tiny little nails, and you're holding the nail with pliers and tapping it with a tack hammer. I don't know, I guess it's a cozy way to spend the winter. I'm going to set that over there for a minute.
You could always go to the prison system.
You know, last year, St. Vincent's Men's Shelter approached me last year, and they wanted us to start a beekeeping program, but then their director got moved to a different program, and the new person was like, no.
Do something.
I was disappointed, though, because that's where Homeful is. Homeful is an urban farm that trains the homeless in the area to have agricultural skills, and beekeeping would go hand in hand, but apparently it's not that cool. These are just some photos of the hives. This is a picture of one of our supers open. So you can see all the bees are up on the top. There are that many bees down the sides as well. This top one is a capped frame of honey. That dark color is all the honey right underneath the wax seal. So they fill those cells. The cells are kind of tipped up a little bit. They fill them with nectar. They evaporate out the water, and then they cap it with wax to store it indefinitely. That down there is a deep that we let the ladies fill out on their own. You can see.
Grab that microphone again.
Oh God, yeah. Sorry. There we go. You can see here all the bees on the frame. The comb, you can see that they're building larger drone comb here at the bottom. They've got some honey storage here, and then worker brood in the middle. But the removable frames, that's definitely the key here. This is the Kenyan top bar hive. I'm going to be building some this winter. They're supposed to be excellent for starting swarms in. Down here in this little lower corner, this is a picture of a traditional Kenyan hive that you would find in a tribe in Africa or in South America. It's built out of reeds, and essentially they just put sticks across the top, and they build their comb down. So you can see the sticks here, and they've built their beautiful natural comb there. The sides flip down so that instead of getting in and inspecting, you can just open the side. You can see whether or not you see the queen, whether you see any disease. It's a little less invasive with your bees. However, when you harvest your honey, you crush and strain these, and so if you're going to reuse the wax, it's great. There's a guy I met up in Detroit. He does all natural comb because he has a huge candle and soap making business on the side. So he doesn't care if his comb gets destroyed because he's got a million other ways he's going to use that wax. So it allows more natural comb size. Some people think that the key to getting around varroa mite is a smaller bee. So we use a smaller cell size. This is a natural cell size so that the bees can decide what size comb they're going to build. It's similar to their natural conditions. Sometimes I think of the Langstroth hive as sort of like a tenement building. Comb must be cut and crushed. It yields a lower amount of honey because bees, when they collect nectar, they either spend that nectar in making honey or they spend that nectar to make wax. So if you're crushing the wax every year, they're going to spend more nectar to make wax to replace that wax, so you get a lower yield. Great for suburban or hobby keeping. One, because it doesn't look like a beehive, so maybe your neighbors, if you didn't talk to them, won't notice. They're easier to move because you can just sort of get a buddy and pick it up and it's not going to fall apart. When I move these, I put ratchet straps around them and I staple the hives to each other because I'm always afraid I'm going to drop it, which would be bad. It's a lot of bees. And it has viewing windows on the side, so if you want to have your neighbors over or your kids' class, you can open that side and they can watch what's going on in the hive without really bothering the bees. This is a Ware hive. It combines both Langstroth supering conditions and the top bar. It doesn't use frames, so it uses a top bar only in a box like the Langstroth. Instead of supering up, they super down. My bees don't build down. Every time I try to super down, they ignore that box. I don't understand, but apparently it works differently in England. And sometimes they'll have the sides will be plexiglass here, and they'll have like a dadoed panel that comes out so that you can look in and observe them just like you would a top bar. Like I said, they're a lot more popular in England, but you do see some people who do them here because they're very easy to build yourself. You build a box, you cut some top bars, you're good to go. Here's some DIY resources for those of you who might want to build your own. Beesource.com is a beekeeping forum, and they have a separate section full of plans for Langstroth, top bar, Ware, some really interesting alternative hives that are like logs. All the plans are free. You can get on, you can print them. There's all kinds of good information on there, different topics. Instructables.com, that's one of my favorite. It's sort of like make.com. If you've been to that, it's like a maker site. Instructables, I've seen several different top bar hives that they've made out of cutting 55-gallon drums in half. So they make like a saddle to hold the drum up, and then they do the top bars and put some like corrugated roofing on top, and they call it done. Yeah, real simple. It's like, that looks great. Bushfarms.com, Michael Bush, he wrote this book here called The Practical Beekeeper, Beekeeping Naturally. It looks like a big book. It's in large print. Everything that's in this book is on his website for free. The only reason he published this book is because some of his diehard fans like books and they don't like the internet, and so he published the book. But you can get all of his information and information on his experimental hives. He builds top bars, he builds Langstroth. He keeps about 200 bees and 200 colonies, and most of them are different. He has some that are Langstroth long hives, so instead of going up, it's one long like coffin-sized box that he puts his frames in going front to back. So he keeps them like a top bar, but with Langstroth equipment so that they're interchangeable with his Langstroth hives. And then local retailers, I like to buy local. I'm sure you like to buy local. There's Walter T. Bee Company in Clarkson, Kentucky. Every year they have this thing on the first weekend in June called Field Day, where they have classes, hands-on workshops. You can come pick up your bees, come pick up your equipment, have some barbecue at lunch. It's not very expensive, and it's only about 2 to 3 hours from here. They are a bee breeder, and they have a big online store. Blue Sky Bee Supply is a little smaller. They're in Ravenna, Ohio. Locally, we have Southwestern Beekeeping Supply in Waynesville. They're on a cattle ranch, but they also sell beekeeping supplies. And then there's a man called Denny Lamb through WCOBA, Wacoba in Urbana. He builds to order. So you can get on their website with his contact information, and a lot of people get their first kit from him. He does a good job. Additional equipment. You're probably wondering what all this stuff is up here. This is what I travel with in my car. All of our bees are off-site, so I have a kit and I drag it with me in case I need something. And I have a lot of different things here, and so I'm just kind of going to go over what each of them are. Number one is the protective suit and veil. You will run into people online who say, you do not need to wear a suit. Man up, don't wear the suit. Your bees are gentle. You don't always know if your bees are going to be gentle. You may have the most gentle bees in the world, and you may make the mistake of visiting them an hour before it's going to rain. They are not kind. They do not want to get rained on. They do not know that you are going to close it before the rain comes. And so we have a couple styles here. This is my husband's suit. It's a full coverall suit. It's big. He's much larger than me. We got this down at Kelly's at Field Day because they have a store where you can go try on all the suits. So if you are an odd size, my husband has super broad shoulders. It took him a couple of tries. They can also custom tailor your suits. This is a very heavy cotton. The other reason I recommend a suit is because of the propolis. We wash our suits every time we come back. This does not wash out. I like my clothes, so I wear a suit.
What does a suit like that cost?
I want to say it was like $120. The suit plus the zip-on veil. This veil is meant to be worn with like a ball cap. So the ball cap keeps it off of your head, and you have a little bit larger range of vision, and it has a zipper enclosure, which my husband likes the security of a zipper enclosure. This is what I wear. I just wear an inspection jacket. So I wear an old pair of jeans, and then I wear just the jacket, and it has elastic on the bottom and on the sleeves here so that they don't crawl in. And then it has an optional zipper, so I can either wear it with the soft veil that came with it. It doesn't work really well on me because I'm short and the veil sits right on my shoulders. It's really comfortable, like up in attics when you're doing a cutout. It's not so hot. I typically wear, this is the traditional screen and hat. So the hat is separate, and this is the screen, and this is a tie that you pull this elastic down, and you tie it in a certain way and it pulls it down. It's easy to take on and take off. It's my favorite, but you have to be comfortable with the possibility that someone was going to crawl in. It happens occasionally, but I've been lucky. It's been a drone every time, and they can't sting. A male bee, he is stingerless.
Poor guy.
Well, he can't do his job if he has a stinger. So
Is there a reason they're white?
they are typically white. Kelly sells a couple that are for women that are pastel colored, but they are white because bees do not alert to a light colored background. Bears are dark, so when they see a big dark object coming towards them, bears are their number one predator in the wild, so you don't want to look like a bear. So typically they're white. I think this is probably just a less expensive material than something that is dyed.
Might be cooler too.
They get really hot, and it depends on, there are some that are made entirely out of this plastic mesh. It's called the Easy Breeze suit or something like that, because typically when you're harvesting, it's inevitably 97 degrees and you're wearing this suit and there's no breeze. So they do get pretty warm. That's why I like the jacket, because I'm not wearing 2 layers. I'm just wearing jeans, my handy dandy elastic ties. around my ankles because when they fall out of the hive, oftentimes they try to climb up your leg. Yeah, behind the knee is a real sensitive spot to get stung. But you don't want them to get past the knee. You feel them and you hit them immediately. Because if they go up any higher, I don't know, that might be the end of it for me. So I like the elastics on my pants. My husband has elastics for his suit, and then I usually just wear boots or something that I don't mind getting wax and propolis on. I think it's a good investment. I think, you can say, yes, I'm going to go out there without a suit and without a veil, and I am not going to freak out when I stick my hand in 60,000 bees. But you don't really know what you're going to do or what your bees are going to do, so buy a suit. The worst that happens is that you don't use it, and then you can bring your friend with you later. Gloves. For a long time, I used lambskin gloves and reused them and wore the same gloves in every hive. Recently, I have started wearing these lovely blue nitrile gloves instead, and I change my gloves in between hives. If you have disease in a hive and you wear the same gloves in every hive, you're going to spread that disease. So we have sort of a disease control kind of quarantine plan. My sister-in-law is a former zookeeper, and when she saw what we were doing, she said, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. You were spreading disease like crazy without even knowing it." So we use different hive tools in every hive, and we change gloves. My husband just wears multiple layers of gloves and peels them off as he goes. He's an evidence technician. He's got all the inside tips, yeah. And then the nitrile ones, they're not going to prevent you from getting stung, but they're going to give you some protection against like an accidental brush-up sting.
You don't want to use vinyl or latex because they're too thin. The nitrile would be much better, yeah.
Yeah, and with well, these are just the ones that we use because Ben uses these at work, and so we buy these. He likes them. The other thing we have the smoker. It's like the iconic beekeeper accessory. You know you're a real beekeeper when you can light the smoker. It's probably the hardest thing to light. A box of pine needles. That's all I use in my smoker. I don't add any shavings or cloth or anything like that. I just use pine needles, and then I put on top. It's a big mess. Told you I was going to make a big mess. On top of my smoker here, once I've got it going good and hot, I put wet grass on top so that it cools the smoke for my bees. A good smoker is a good thing to have. It does not calm your bees. Everybody thinks that they calm your bees. It doesn't. It makes your bees think that their house is on fire. And what they're going to do is, instead of bothering you, they're going to fill their honey stomachs with nectar in case they have to evacuate. Bees are preppers. So what they do is they smell the smoke, they go down into the frames, they start drinking nectar in case they have to leave their home. So sometimes what you can use instead of a smoker is a spray bottle of sugar water. A lot of people use a spray bottle of sugar water instead. It distracts the bees, they start grooming each other, cleaning each other off. However, it does not make them go down into the frames. So when you're restacking your boxes, if they don't go down, sometimes you squish a bunch. So I use the smoker and I use the sugar. This particular sugar has an essential oil compound in it called Honeybee Healthy. I'm kind of excited you were talking about essential oils. I was going to skip that part because a lot of people think that's hoodoo. Honeybee Healthy is essentially sugar water with lemongrass, spearmint, and an emulsifier to keep it all together. It has a lot of different amino acids and awesomeness. The University of West Virginia discovered this particular formula. It's essentially a vitamin booster for your bees. Helps with their immunity and all sorts of other things. Honeybee Healthy. You can find homemade recipes for Honeybee Healthy, but it is very important that you use a food-grade essential oil, like the Young Life or the Avalon Organic, something that's been distilled using steam and not an alcohol or a solvent. It's really important. The other really important thing I carry is a bee brush. It's just like a drafting brush if you ever took hand drafting in high school. This allows you to brush your bees back into your box, or when you're collecting swarms, to brush them off that branch into the box. You try to be as gentle as you can with your bees. You'll start to really feel bad crushing hundreds of them every time you do an inspection. So I use this all the time. I really don't like crushing my bees. And then the hive tool. The hive tool is really important. It's part scraper, it's part prier. You can get some that are like cat's paws that you use. You can hit it to pry your boxes apart. This is a really fancy one. It's like the Swiss Army knife of hive tools. It's got a thing for nails and the pry bar for to lift the frames out. This curvy part, I was mentoring this girl, and she never knew what the little pry part was for. It's for hooking under your frame and lifting your frame out, so you can get it underneath there and use a lever to crack it out. She was just like, oh, that makes so much sense. I don't know, I thought maybe you hung something. I was like, no. No. We have 6 of these, so when we go to a different hive, what we can do is we use one hive tool per hive, and then we stick it. We have a galvanized steel smoker bucket, and I dump what's in my smoker in the bucket. I make a fire. I drop my hive tool in there because fire is one of the few things that kills most of the bacteria and viruses you find in the hive. So I will immediately burn my hive tools on site, and then I take them home and I wash them and I sterilize them with bleach. Seems a little extreme, but you get disease once and it's worse than the flu at home. Another thing we have is a capping scratcher. I don't use this very often, but sometimes online you see people using this to take the wax off of their honey frames. It takes forever, don't do that. But one of the things this is used for is for pulling larvae out of the frame to check for mites. It allows you to kind of get it into there, you can pull it out, and then you can look and see if you have any parasitic mites on your larva. That's essentially all I use it for. And then if you're running less than 10 frames, you can buy a fancy frame spacer that guarantees a universal spacing between your frames, so your bees don't build too far out.
Those that are anal retentive?
Yeah, for the anal, my husband, oh my gosh, he's just all the way down. Like, I don't even, I'm like, yeah, it looks good. Hot knife. We use a hot knife to cut all of our cappings. It's way faster. It's one of those knives that plugs into the wall and it heats up the blade, and you can cut it. That's great for wax. Extracting equipment, not necessary in your first year. You're not going to have a honey harvest. So if you have a mentor or a buddy who has extracting equipment, then you can use theirs. That's a great way to save on some money. There are some online plans on how to build them out of like bicycle tires. We have a 4-frame extractor and a cappings tub and all this stuff, but it's kind of good in your first year not to get focused on that honey crop. That way if your bees don't make it, you're not looking at several $100s worth of accessories that you bought that you're not going to use. The other number one, duct tape. You always need a roll of duct tape. If you have to fix a hole in your suit, duct tape. If a woodpecker has pecked a hole in the side of your hive, duct tape. I use it all the time. I use it if I forget my leg elastics. I use it if my kids are coming out and I have to custom fit my suit to them. I use duct tape. It never fails. You will need the duct tape if you forget it. Hand stapler is very important to put mouse guards on and different things. A camera, it's great with the camera phones now. You can just take a picture with your camera phone and then it'll help you remember later when you're doing your records keeping what you did, where your boxes are, what things you changed. And then some kind of records keeping material. I had a few example sheets of of a hive record book up front. So just a notebook. There are some apps you can get for your smartphone. Always good to have something. So let's talk about bee breeds. Do we need to take a break? Okay, we're good? Okay, I get a little long-winded, so.
They can get up things.
Okay, cut me off if you need to. There are different breeds of bees. They're all Apis mellifera, but there are all different types of Apis mellifera that you can purchase. The most common of which is the Italian. They're sold by way oversold more than anything, mostly because they have a high honey yield. They're a very gentle bee. And they are decently cold resistant. So Italian bees, they're a little more gold. They're usually what commercial beekeepers are selling. Carniolan bees, they're a little more hygienic. They're a little more aggressive. They are very prone to swarming in the spring. If you have carniolans, they're going to swarm earlier than Italians will because they're better at building brood. You have Caucasian bees, which are not very popular here, but they are sometimes one that is sold. Russian hygienic bees are like the new it bee. They are not a beginning beekeeper bee, though they are more aggressive. When they say hygienic, what they mean is that they are the type A bee. They are constantly cleaning their hive. They are constantly warding against pests. They are constantly on the lookout for something that does not belong. So they are cleaner in their hive, which should make them healthier. The problem with Russians is that if you aren't requeening with a pure Russian every year, that genetic breakdown, sometimes the traits you get out of those bees are the tendency to be more aggressive. And so you may not want that as a beginning beekeeper. A friend of mine did not listen to my advice. She bought Russian bees. She installed them in their brand new home. They left. They said, peace out. We're not living here. We don't like it. I don't know if it was the smell. She thinks the box is cursed. I said, those are Russian bees. They're harder. And then you have survivor bees. These are the mutt bees that you collect in swarm season. They are particular to your ends. There's a group on Facebook, the Buckeye Queen Producers. They don't always have a large number of queens available, but hopefully in the spring, because of Wakoba's class, there'll be more so that you can get a local queen. Right now, they're sort of like leprechaun gold, trying to find that local queen. I mean, you've got to really get on the list the year before to get one of those.
And what do they charge for a queen? I mean,
A queen by herself is anywhere between $25 and $40 for a bug that they're going to mail you in an envelope. Yeah.
In an envelope, not a box.
Yeah, well, she's in a box, and then they put that box in an envelope that says live bee or something like that. It's special delivery. It always freaks the kids out. You're like, it's a bee in a box. So here are the different types of bees that you find within your hive. So regardless of what breed of bee you select, you're going to have one queen. You're going to have thousands of workers, anywhere between 10,000 in a package to 80,000 in a full hive of workers, which are female bees. They do all the work. And then you have the drones. All the drones do is mate with the queen, and then they die because mating with the queen kills them. The queen here is the largest. She only takes 16 days to develop because she's fed more royal jelly than the other bees. So they feed her royal jelly for 8 days. They cap her up. She comes out. They breed more than one queen at a time. So essentially, it's like Game of Thrones. The new queen emerges. The other queens emerge. They fight to the death, and the survivor queen stays to rule. The old queen takes off, swarms away, starts a new colony. The worker is exactly the same as the queen, except she is only fed royal jelly for 3 days. And then she's fed by the worker bees. She takes 21 days to develop, and she has a lifespan of anywhere between 3 weeks and 6 weeks. Sometimes a little bit longer if they're a winter bee and they're not foraging. Workers literally work until their wings fall off and they die in the field. from when they're born out of their little cell until their wings fall off. So it's a tough life. The drone there is the big bee. He does not have a stinger because then he cannot mate with the queen. It'll get in the way. When he mates with the queen, his sex glands are ripped out of his body and stored inside of the queen, which is why her abdomen in the back is so much larger. She carries the gonads of the male inside of her body.
That's love.
It's love. They have the larger eyes, the large compound eyes, because they spend up to 8 hours a day looking for a queen to mate with. They hang out in drone, they call them drone collection sites, or essentially the drone singles bar, looking for queens. In the meantime, the workers feed them. And in the fall, they get killed. So here's a little illustration of the laying process. You can see the queen laying the egg here in the bottom of the cell, and then they feed it the royal jelly until it gets, we call it the C stage, when it looks like a little C. And then once it's fully reached the height of the cell, they then cap it, and then she emerges out. It's the same for all of the bees, it's just the time periods are different. I blew somebody's mind. I was talking to somebody at Metro Parks, and the drones, they're the same egg, but they're unfertilized. They are a monochromatic cell, so there are not two sets of chromosomes in the drone, just one. So bees can reproduce regardless of whether or not they're fertilized, but if they can't fertilize an egg, then they don't have the female to lay the eggs. They only have half. So the queen bee, she is the most important. I don't know if you can see her very well because of the glare, but this red color here, this is the queen bee. She's surrounded by her attendants. They groom her, they feed her. When you buy a queen, she comes with attendants, little worker bees inside that will feed her while they're in the male. She will spend all day long laying eggs, all day, all night. The only time she flies is when she mates. She will leave, she'll hatch, kill all of her sisters, go on her mating flight, come back, and then 2 weeks later she'll start laying. She'll continue to lay until the next time is swarming season, in which case she will stop laying so that her body mass will reduce in size and she's able to fly again. But typically a fertilized queen is too fat to fly. Some people will clip their wings so that they can't swarm. I let my bees swarm. Anyway, queen problems are becoming more and more frequent. So if you are going to get into beekeeping, read up on queen problems. These are fertility issues. Sometimes you get a queen who is not well mated. She's a drone layer. She's not, we're finding more sterile drones in the environment because of whatever reason. They're shooting blanks, but she can't tell. And a lot of queens are only lasting 18 months. They're only good layers for about 18 months, where before, at a minimum, you could expect them to lay for at least 2 to 3 years before you would have to replace them. Now you're looking at a yearly replacement of queens, which kind of speaks to the environmental problems we're having. Because weak queens, if you have a weak queen in your hive, it opens up the possibility of disease. There are more empty cells in the hive that they have to try and keep clean. There are fewer bees being born, which leads to population problems. And then sometimes you get deformed bees, bees that are not coming out correctly because there's something wrong with the queen. Here is a worker bee. Just a little diagram here, in case you didn't know. Bees, they have their proboscis here, which is sort of like a straw that they use to suck up nectar. And this goes back to their stomachs. They have 2 stomachs. They have one, which is their honey stomach, which is like their storage compartment for the nectar. This is where they put the nectar until they get back to the hive, in which case they vomit it back up to another bee, and that bee then puts that in their honey stomach, and then they go deposit it in another cell. So they have 2 stomachs for the processing of honey, and then the other one for the processing of food for energy. They have the sting here on the end. When a honeybee stings you, the sting is barbed, and it pulls the sting and the poison sac out of the bee's body, essentially killing the bee. So that's, you can always tell if you've been stung by a honeybee versus a wasp. A wasp will sting you over and over again. A honeybee can only sting you once because it will kill her. Let me have some other assorted stuff. It all looks like goo when you smash them. And just as a little recap, yeah, they perform all the work from house bees. They function in the hive for 3 weeks. So for 3 weeks, they live in the hive after they hatch. At that time, they're secreting royal jelly and they're secreting wax. So those are their main jobs. And once the royal jelly glands and the wax glands sort of dry up, that's when they go to forage, and then they'll forage until their wings give out or they're killed some other way in the hive. In the absence of a queen, say for example, something happens to your queen, she gets smushed while you're doing an inspection, and maybe the workers haven't caught on. Usually they know immediately when the queen dies. So maybe they don't know that she died, and they haven't started to build a new queen, right? Because as long as an egg is younger than 3 days, they can take that egg and turn it into a queen cell. Sometimes they miss that, and they miss that window of opportunity, and the brood in the hive disappear. And when the smell of the brood is gone, 1 or 2 or sometimes as many as 8 of the female workers will develop their sex glands and begin to lay. However, they will only lay drones because they cannot mate. So one of the things to look for in your hive, if you have an unusually high number of drones, it means there's something wrong with your queen. Either she is a drone layer, she did not mate well, or she's gone and your worker is laying eggs, and it's a very difficult problem to correct in your hive. It usually means that your hive is not going to survive, because you can't see her, she doesn't get bigger. You can't identify her from the other hive, or the other hive bees. So anyway, here's our buddy the drone. You can see here that the way you can tell that they're drone cells is that they're bullet shaped. The bee is bigger so that the capping protrudes from the wax, whereas the worker's wax is very flat and even with the comb. The drones are bullet shaped and stick out from there. In the fall, the workers will kill all the drones because all they do is eat food. And since they don't contribute to society over the winter, they kill as many of them as they can. They leave a few in case they may need to build a queen. But generally, in September, you will see outside of your hive hundreds of dead drones. It's a sad world, being a drone.
You mean they don't have a welfare program?
No welfare program, no work rehabilitation program. They don't have honey stomachs. They don't have stingers. They can't even feed themselves. Yeah.
I heard about them throwing their stuff out on the lawn. Never thought I heard them throw you out on the lawn.
Yeah, they throw you out on the lawn. Yeah, they go around the hive all day begging for food, and some nice female will take pity on them and give them something. When you order your bees, you will have a couple of different options. The most common way is to buy a 3-pound package. It is literally 3 pounds of bees, which is about 10,000 bees. They vacuum them out of multiple different hives with a bee vacuum into this box, and then they put a queen in a cage in the box. So it's not necessarily the queen of those bees. It's a queen that they have raised that they put in with these bees, and then they ship them to you, or you go pick them up, and you have to install them. So you have to take a box of bees and put it in another box. So it's a little tricky. It's best to do it with somebody who's done it before. It's usually around $98 for a package of bees. I bought 8 packages this year. I have 1 that's probably going to make it. So you really got to trust your bee breeder. Ask your beekeeping friends, where did you buy your bees? Can I buy some bees off of you? Because your second option is a nuke. And a nuke is an already established colony. So what they'll do is they'll split bees. So I will take my Langstroth colony here, right? And I will take 5 frames out of this colony. And those frames will contain eggs, honey, and pollen, enough to start a brand new colony. And I will either introduce a new queen that I've purchased, or I will allow them to make their own queen. And then once that queen has mated and has started laying, then I will sell that as a nuke. So you buy an established colony. It's only 5 frames. But it's an established queen. She's definitely laying. She's not having laying issues. But they'll come later in the season. They'll come in like June around Ohio. If you want an Ohio nuke, it's going to be June. And they're usually more expensive, around $140. And they're always in deeps. When you sell nukes, they come in deep nukes. You can make your own medium nukes, but I haven't met a bee breeder yet who sells medium nukes. So that's always kind of tricky. That's the main reason we use deep boxes, is because we use nukes. Yeah?
I just have a quick question. You said that they vacuum the bees off of different hives.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that increase the risk of disease, getting diseased bees?
Well, that's why bee breeders, they're inspected before they sell. So the state inspector will come and inspect all of their bees and inspect their records to make sure that they should be free of signs of disease and mites. But who knows once they get to you? You know what I mean? Right. But they should be healthy bees. And most the bee breeding industry is very big in Georgia and Florida, and so that's a big business for those states. They invest a lot of money into providing those resources for those bee breeders. And then your other option is to try and lure a swarm. Swarms are great. Swarms are free. You can buy swarm lures, which come in these little vials. You pop them. They're essentially lemongrass oil. You could bait a hive yourself with lemongrass oil, purchased over there. The lemongrass oil attracts the bees to the hive, and if you have some frames in there that are already seeded with wax, or they have foundation in them, if you put them out in your yard and say you have a lot of flowers or you're in an area where there's a lot of swarming, West Kettering has a ton of swarms. I don't know why. You may catch bees. Every year at our honey house where we store all of our equipment, we catch a swarm of bees because they can smell it. They're all the equipment's there, all the wax is there, that attracts them to it. You'll see scout bees out a couple of days before, like checking it out, like, hey, you could live here. And then when they swarm, those scout bees let them know where that location is, and they'll show up. Yeah?
Would that attract the bees anywhere, or just to a hive?
The lemongrass?
Yeah. If I put it outside my neighbor's door.
Well, bees will swarm into anything. If there is lemongrass oil there and swarming season, yes, they would come to your neighbor's door. They communicate through smell. Yeah, they communicate through smell. So when they smell home, that's where they're going to go. So a lot of people who are DIYers will build their own equipment and then put a lure in there and then put it in their yard and wait and see if they catch a swarm. Yeah.
Generally speaking, what is the success rates of each of the three types?
I don't really have numbers, but I can tell you about my success this year. Swarms, natural swarms, 1 in 6 swarms will succeed in establishing a colony without beekeeper intervention. So I caught 8. I gave 1 to another beekeeper. We used a couple others to combine with packages that we had bought, and then I had 3 that are standalone swarms, and those swarms have survived. Our packages did very poorly this year, but I think some of that was environmental. Other people I know who bought packages this year from other suppliers, their packages did very well. Nukes are going to give you a better idea of success because it's an established hive. And so any queen problems, if they see them, they're not going to sell you that nuke. But you gamble by waiting for the nuke because that bee supplier's nukes may not be successful, and then it's going to be June and you don't have bees and you'll have to wait till the next year. So it's sort of a gambling man's proposition. Next year, I'm not buying packages. If I need queens, I'm going to buy them locally from the Buckeye Queen Buckeye, Queen Group, whatever they are, the Queen Project. I'm going to try and buy from them, and then I'm going to catch swarms. That's my goal for next year, because we had a significant financial loss this year.
We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. And I'm going to, let me, I'm going to skip ahead. That's okay, I ramble on. And I'm going to give this PowerPoint to them so they can put it on the website and you can look at it. Inspection is what you do once you install your bees to make sure they're healthy. You're going to inspect your bees every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on whether or not you see problems. As the season goes on, you're going to inspect them less because there's less you need to do. The main reason you're expecting every 1 to 2 weeks is that you want to be able to give them equipment space. If they run out of space, they're going to swarm. You're going to lose population. You're going to have your bees set back because they've spent time doing that instead of collecting honey. Or maybe you're going to miss disease, or you're going to miss pests, or you're going to miss something that's making your bees ill. And this is a picture of what you want to see in your hive, good laying pattern. You can see that this queen laid eggs all the way through that frame. The holes that you see in this frame, it's called shotgunning, is actually where they've been hatching. Sometimes when you see this in lighter colored cappings, like they've just capped them, it means that that brood has died. So it means that you have something going on that's killing the pupa. But in this case, they were all hatching. So you want to see that solid brood pattern. That's when you know you have a great queen, because she is laying like a rock star. You are also looking for the brood. You're not looking for the queen. You don't want to see the queen when you get in your hive to inspect it. If you pull her out on a frame, there's a very good chance you're going to kill her, either taking her out or putting her in. Once you see eggs, and these little teeny tiny specks, those are the eggs. Those are less than 3 days old. You know you've had a queen in there in 3 days. When you see the different stages of larva, you know that you've had a queen within that number of days it's taken to get to that developmental phase. So for me, when I'm inspecting, I'm looking for disease, I'm looking for pests, I'm looking for eggs. Once I see those things, I get out of the hive. I don't spend any more time in there than I have to because they get mad, especially if it's raining. They're going to die. That's the way it is. I took a really great class at SWOBA last year with Kim Flottam, who's the editor of Bee Culture, and it was all about nutrition, proactive feeding to get healthy bees. And more and more and more you need to feed. 10 years ago, I never fed my bees, ever. Now I feed them twice a year. I feed them in the spring, I feed them pollen, and in the winter, if they don't have enough food stores, I feed them 2-to-1 sugar syrup.
Now, is this because of development that you have to feed it now, maybe?
There has been some sort of change in the rural areas where I keep bees, that they are not bringing home enough food. Some people think it's because pesticides and fungicides affect their ability to find their way home. It's killing the foragers in the process of trying to collect it. Like, for example, GMO corn is coated with pesticide.
Yes.
It looks like pollen. Bees are hungry in the spring, they're starving, they're coming out of their hibernation. They will go eat that dust, it will kill them in the field. So, hot button topic. Go back one slide. Bee health is the other thing you're going to talk about. Honey, they talk about how it's an antibacterial, no bacterial grows in honey. That's great. The hive is not an antibacterial place. They get diseases. They get bacterial diseases, they get spore diseases, they get viruses from mites, and then they have to deal with other pests like the varroa mite, the hive beetle, gypsy moth, mice, yellow jackets, all kinds of things trying to kill your bees. This website here, beeinformed.org, is a great visual resource for diagnosing hive problems. They do a survey every year, they take a census of what the loss is, and then they allow those numbers to go to, like, the American Honey Federation and things like that for research. But they have a lot of great photos, color photos, because a lot of these beekeeping books are in black and white, of what different bee diseases look like. Most commonly, they're brood diseases, so your developing brood has something wrong with them. I want to talk about one pest of the hive in particular before I finish up, and this is the Varroa mite. This little thing right here is a parasitic mite that lives on your honeybees. They co-evolved with the Asian honeybee. Asian honeybees are tiny, so they don't affect them like they do the European honeybee. The European honeybee is the perfect host for these mites. They lay their eggs in the cells, and then the queen lays her egg in the cell, and as the pupa develops, the mite develops, and it attaches itself to the developing pupa. So when the pupa emerges, it's already deformed because this mite has sucked all of its lymphatic fluid out of it, and so it's got deformed wings, or it's very pale. They look like ghost bees. They're like white. It's a vector for 21 different viruses. This fantastic brood disease that some intelligent scientist called parasitic mite syndrome, or PMS. My bees have PMS. That was a man. That was a man. Mites are found everywhere except for Australia. Australia is the only place in the world yet to be infested with Varroa destructor. And it's actually, that's its scientific name. They will be in your hive. They will be in your hive even if you buy a package, even if you buy a nuke, even if you get a certificate that says there weren't any in there when they sold them to you. They will be there, even if you cannot see them. When they get to the point where you can see them on your worker bees, because they start on your drones, you are already infested. You probably have at least 10,000 mites in your hive. So one of the big things to do is to be on the lookout and to use different techniques to see the population of Varroa in your hive. And some of that is the sugar dusting, to take count samples, or you do another thing where you dump a sampling of bees in a jar with powdered sugar. You shake them up, you dump it out. The powdered sugar knocks the mite off of the bee, and then you can take a count. And once your count gets so high, you will need to treat your hive. And there are a few non-chemical mite treatments out there that are organic or they're food-based. There are chemical miticides, which are pesticides that you put into your hive. But you're going to have to figure out how you can combat that. There's wax moth, other pests. Record keeping is really important. There's a smartphone app called HiveTrax. HiveTrax is free with less than six hives. It'll show you on GPS where your hives are and what your 3-mile radius is. It's got all kinds of cool bells and whistles. It's got a pro version that you can spend a little bit more for that'll track your weather for you and stuff. Or you can do I do a handwritten out in the field. But in summary, once you figure out all of this stuff, it's a lot of information. The big thing to do is to keep reading. Read. There are magazines. Bee Culture is based in Medina, Ohio. You can pick this up at Tractor Supply. All kinds of books that you can get at the library, even the old books. Hive and the Honeybee, written by Langstroth, is still relevant today. Continuing education, find a bee club, keep going to classes, Southwestern Ohio Bee School, field day at Kelly's. Find the style that fits you. Don't try to change like the way you're going to function to raise your bees, because your bees are going to do best with whatever you're naturally good at. If you're lazy, be a lazy beekeeper. Michael Bush talks about that all the time. He's a lazy beekeeper. That's how he keeps his bees. Keep trying. You know, if your bees die, don't give up. Everybody's bees die. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. Find a mentor. I love my mentor. He's my father-in-law. It's been wonderful. But I still go to a bee club to try and find out what other people are doing. And then have fun. It's incredibly great. Here's some pictures. This is my son and my father-in-law extracting in the honey house. He's got the little roller there. And that's me and my son Connor, who's 8, out in the hive. So it's really enjoyable. It's a legacy type hobby, or if you want to take it to the commercial level. I love it. It's fantastic. It's a big staple of what we do in the summer. So thank you for having me, and I'll answer any questions you want until they kick us out. Thanks.
Come on, guys. Let's give Amanda a hand. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Guys, we want to thank you for coming tonight. I know there was a lot of information that was given out. Amanda's made herself available to us. If you want to talk to her afterwards, this would be great. I'm excited because bees are preppers. I mean, that's exactly I heard keywords through the whole thing. That's awesome. Yeah, so, okay, Christmas time, if you really want to impress your relatives and friends, send them a bee package, don't mark it, send it right to them, watch the cards flow, okay? So, I thought that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is like, hey, I could buy some relatives some bees, and send it out to them. And then another thing that I got from this was, the poor fellas in the group, they get demolished after everything. So I've learned a lot today. Thank you again, man. Thank you so much. Guys, we appreciate you coming out tonight. Don't forget that November's the big day, this November for CPR class. Everything else, keep going on, keep prepping. If you have any questions, just give us a call. We're just a phone call away or an email away. We'll talk to you later. Have a good night.